talking about, and I will go through fast and we'll sort of hold questions to the end. So what is SB 403 and why do we oppose it? But first of all, what exactly are the values in which all of us operate? Certainly CoHNA operates. We're all against discrimination. We are guided by a respect for human rights and human dignity. We also believe that laws must be equitable and facially neutral. Do note that word. We'll use it a lot. And I hope you all will absorb it and start to understand the importance of it and take it forward in your own conversations and communities. And that well-intentioned laws should not have unintended consequences, especially against minorities. So in a summary, why is this bill problematic, right? There are a lot of many reasons, but primarily, if you can take away one thing, what I ask people who are supporting the bill, it's really, why would anyone support a bill that seeks to profile a person based on their birth? If you think that sounds crazy, it is, because that's what SB 403 does. It will, despite all the protestations of its author, it will lead to selective profiling and stereotyping based on a bunch of very nebulous criteria that have been defined by the caste experts, including things that like last names, your dietary preferences, whether you wear religious markers like a bindi or Indian clothes or a Janayu, or do you go for puja? Do you send your kids to Sunday school? Are you celebrating Holi and Diwali? All of those have been mentioned as evidence of caste oppression in the United States. So don't let anyone disprove you of the assumption that this is a neutral bill. No, it is very specifically targeted for targeting people from a certain community. The bill itself says it's targeting South Asians and people from a few other parts of the world. That itself makes a law inequitable. The minute a law singles out one set of people versus another, it's no longer a fair and equitable law. It also very disturbingly leads to an automatic presumption of guilt and fault because you don't have to look very far away. You just have to think about the Cisco case where the two gentlemen who were sued by the state of California, the media, the activists, the lawmakers, and many of us in the community presumed them guilty. And they had to spend 3 years fighting, spending a lot of money, putting their lives on hold, undergoing unimaginable trauma to clear their names and prove themselves innocent. That is a subversion of every principle of justice, because generally people are assumed innocent and the state has to prove them guilty. As we saw happen in Cisco without even SB 403 in place, any Indian or Hindu accused of caste discrimination is automatically presumed guilty. And not only were the individuals presumed guilty, the entire community is presumed guilty as a result of the actions of a few. So be very worried about that, because bad apples exist in every society, in every group, and you're going to have Hindus and Indian Americans that do bad stuff. You really don't want to be responsible for it as a community when that happens. Will deny us equal protection and due process under California law. And this is also very important. Existing laws around national origin and ancestry already provide sufficient protection. And that's not us saying it, that's the author of the bill saying it. And the text of the bill as it stands even right now says that itself. So again, a very fundamental ask, why are you adding this word caste and why are you creating this whole bill if you already are able to tackle discrimination? Because tackling discrimination is a very worthy goal and one that we all subscribe to. But SB 403 does not help anything that is not already addressed. What it does is create suspicion and fear around a class of people based on their birth. So to clarify discrimination by codifying bias by another group is basically selective enforcement and racial profiling, and something that must be avoided at all costs. So if you remember nothing from the seminar, I hope you'll remember that. Again, more reasons about why, if you look at the history of even the United States or California in particular, benign laws do not always mean benign impacts, right? And a lot of the horrific incidents of history that we now raise our heads over and wonder how they could ever happen actually come cloaked in good intentions. You can look back into history and find things like the Asian Exclusion Act and the Japanese internment camps and many other things. But you can also look more recently, just in living memory, right? Things like the Don't Ask, Don't Tell law and the Patriot Act, they all came with similar assurances that they were meant to do good, they were meant to offer protections. They ended up doing exactly the opposite and targeting the communities that they were supposedly giving justice to. So let's be very wary. Let's ask our lawmakers to be very wary of overreach and profiling. There's already a massive economic impact. So I think we talked a little bit about discriminatory behavior, because what happens under SB 403 is nothing is outlawed. So it's not like the bill says vegetarianism is now illegal. It just says that if it just sort of has these presumptions that if you happen to be South Asian or Hindu and you're vegetarian, for example, that's now 2 black strikes against you, especially if somebody comes at you with a complaint. Similarly, if you happen to have one of the last names that they have deemed suspicious. So it's almost worse than being told that, these 5 names are illegal. Because one could work around those minefields. Right now, it's just any aspect of human activity, human interaction and relationships could be weaponized if a conflict happens. And we all know that conflicts happen. The Cisco case itself was an example of a conflict happening between 2 people who had known each other for decades. They had been batchmates at IIT together. They had worked at different companies, and Sundar Iyer, the primary accused in the Cisco case, had gone out of his way to recruit the person who would later go on to allege caste discrimination because he was denied a small raise and claimed to be. So I think just to be aware, and if you listen to some of the testimony that we have heard repeatedly, because CoHNA has been in this fight for 3 years now, and we have heard a lot of testimony from the other side on what they constitute as caste discrimination. And over again, we hear allegations around people's dietary habits, what people wear, celebrating Diwali and Holi, and also just things like vegetarianism, like nonstop complaints about people being vegetarian, not being invited to a party, not being invited to a play date, breaking up a relationship, roommate conflicts. These are, workplace conflicts. These are things that happen. But when in SB 403 will allow all of that to be weaponized against Hindus and Indian Americans in a way that other communities will not suffer. We've put some examples here, and I won't belabor all of them. The other point everyone needs to remember is that we are now seeing a very weird phenomenon where we see academics, media people, and taxpayer-supported bodies opining and telling us what it means to be a Hindu, what it means to be a South Asian, and forcing identities on us. Cisco, again, being a primary example, where the primary accused, Sundar Iyer, was presented by California in their lawsuit as being upper caste and Brahmin and a Hindu, where in real life, Sundar Iyer had actually spent 20 years of his life being openly and publicly atheist and irreligious. So his identity was denied. The state looked at his last name, his place of origin, and said, okay, based on your last name and your origin, you are Brahmin, upper caste, Hindu, and therefore you are oppressive. So you are basically taking people's fundamental rights. And I know Sudhaji will talk a little bit about that too when her turn comes. So this fundamental takeover of your right to be who you are is very disturbing. And basically setting up these academics or experts as experts on our faith. We have never been a faith that has relied on experts. We've never had a pope, we've never had a council of clergy, and we don't need some Ivy League academics now to be playing that role for us. In case anybody is thinking about, what's the harm, right? What's the problem in adding on some clarifications so that even one case of discrimination has a stronger chance of getting addressed? Well, let's look at the harm that's already happening without laws like SB 403 in place, because the Hindu community and the Indian American community has allowed this conversation to go unchallenged for so long. So back in December 2021, the UC San Diego Ethnic Studies Department put out a press release. You can still find it. It's up there on their website, where they openly state their plans to discriminate against upper caste Hindus in their hiring, whether that be hiring in, as professors, as teaching assistants, or just in who they admit as students and administrators. So think about that kind of open discrimination that's already happening at the state-sponsored leading university. Between that and Cisco, you can see how dangerous this trend is. And we're talking about real economic harm, denial of the ability to have a livelihood, pursue your job, etc. We're not talking about somebody not being invited to a party, which is, important, but certainly pales when compared to real job loss and the real kind of trauma that the Cisco accused underwent. I want to quickly move on to the fact that also anytime an edifice of reform is sought to be built, it cannot be built on hate. That no reform can be done on an edifice of hate. And it's really important to spend a couple of minutes realizing that no matter what you have read in the media, and the Cisco case itself has led to 50,000 references in the media, every media article references one survey, and that is the only survey that has been provided to date, aside from anecdotal evidence that I mentioned before. That is the only evidence that has been provided to date. It comes from a group called Equality Labs. For those of you who are not familiar with Equality Labs, I would really recommend that you go over to our YouTube channel at CoHNA Official and look for a 2-minute video from which basically says who is behind the caste resolutions. It's a phenomenal video put together by Hindus on campus, a wonderful activist group of students who really put a lot of effort into showcasing the pure hate that this group has. And this group is very important because they are the co-sponsor of SB 403 for all effects and purposes. So again, if a lawmaker tells you that, this is not an Equality Labs issue, please don't believe it, because there is lots of evidence, and that they are effectively a co-sponsor of this bill and have basically co-written it with Senator Wahab. And on the other hand, while Senator Wahab has posed extensively with them, has had any number of meetings with them, has tweeted about her interactions with them, she has refused to give a similar in-person meeting to constituents, including us at CoHNA, who have repeatedly asked her for 2 months now to give us time, because fundamentally, any story both sides should be heard. But our side has not been heard. What we have got are a few cursory Zoom meetings, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, very different from the quality in-person interactions that she has had with the other side. She has even made time to meet with, Indian actors, foreign actors, different political professors and activists. But unfortunately, when 250 Hindu Americans showed up outside her office even refused to accept a peace petition, a written petition, and has made no effort to set up an in-person meeting with us. So keep that in mind. And the source of caste data in the US comes from Equality Labs, which is a private company with no research background and a history of hateful events. A few of which are showcased here. Sharmin Hussain was their political director and co-founder. She is a Bangladeshi Muslim and basically tweeted publicly saying that, arguing to salvage Hinduism is dominant caste rhetoric, and Hinduism cannot be part of the progressive discourse until we dismantle Brahmanism. So the co-founder of this organization openly tweeted that she thinks Hinduism needs to be dismantled. Tenmuri Soundarajan, whose handle is Dalit Diva, and has posted this on her Twitter handle and ran a 2-hour workshop accusing all Hindus who were not Dalits of being potential rapists and criminals. Think about that. Your baby, who's a minute old or 10 minutes old, is potentially guilty and will be guilty under California law until he or she can prove himself innocent. So be very afraid of the potential of this law, because we have seen laws like this in the past in India and in other places in the world. Again, the survey that I mentioned from Equality Labs, not only is it extremely faulty and has been called out for the poor quality of the survey taking mechanism and the data that it produced, you don't have to believe Hindu organizations for it. It has been rejected by the very California courts. So I'm not really sure, as a California resident, whether we should believe our courts or our legislators who now want to pass a law on the basis of this survey. But Equality Labs had attempted to admit this survey as admissible evidence as part of its Cisco lawsuit. But in 2021, the judge basically deemed it unscientific and denied it as inadmissible. And, Carnegie and Carnegie, which is a major American research think tank, published its own survey in 2021. And they actually analyzed Equality Lab's survey, and this is their footnote 29. Again, very politely calling it unscientific and therefore not a good fit for, and really something that we would say is not usable for making policy. One more interesting data that came out from the Carnegie survey, which they themselves looked at how Indian Americans form their social networks and what are the main criteria. And you can see two key charts from their survey. They kind of looked at the role of religion. You can see it plays a pretty significant role. And the role of region, which we all know translates into language. And for anybody interested in passing on their language, they tend to hang out with people from their region so that they can talk in a shared language. But when you ask the question on caste, the numbers, the gray and light blue shifts dramatically. And you can see a whole quarter of the residents pretty much say they have no awareness of caste. Another 23% saying almost no awareness or no. And this would be everybody, all the second generation folks born who would have no awareness of caste except for what they are taught by American textbooks in their seventh grade classes. So you can start to see that most Hindu Americans are basically saying that we have little to no awareness of caste. And this data shows out in this other one when they ask about friends, the number of people who say all of them is almost like negligible. So caste is really not a criteria around which networks in South Asia are formed. And if before anybody gets excited about this 21%, we compared it, how we form our networks with how the networks of other mainstream groups are formed. So if you look at white evangelical Protestants or Black Protestants, you'll see that 82% to 70% of their networks come from their church. So this desire of humans to cluster by certain shared values or backgrounds is certainly not unique to Indian Americans or Hindus. And as befits an immigrant population, ours is far, far more diverse and scattered than any group that's been here for a while. So if nobody goes after white Protestants for having 80% of their network from their church, and we all know from working in the corporate world that, you're often asked to go look for, if you're looking to fill certain jobs, you're openly encouraged to share it with your networks, whether that's a club or a church network or a school network, an alumni network. I mean, that is openly encouraged. So again, the double standard of a network created on a basis of a church is fine, but one created on the basis of, any kind of South Asian affiliation is problematic. That's a double standard that the community should not accept and ask our lawmakers to not do it. Now, wanted to switch gears. So this is all some of the history, and I wanted to switch a little bit to some recent developments that have happened in the last couple of weeks. Hopefully, many of you have been following the fight that has been put back by any number of individuals and a vast number of organizations, which we'll get into. But this week, there was a very interesting development. So Cisco, the lawsuit at Cisco has sort of been a foundational piece in this caste fight. And for 3 years, the employees of the South Asian, the Indian American, and the Hindu employees at Cisco, while we have all lived under a cloud of suspicion, they have lived under a much stronger cloud of suspicion because they were directly impacted in the company, which was supposed to be the front head of this enormous amount of discrimination, horrible practices that were apparently underway if the lawsuit that California had filed was to be believed. So this week, we saw that there was a letter that was signed by 30 plus Cisco employees, former and current employees, who basically sent in a public complaint to the Civil Rights Department, outlining how they have perceived, what they have faced, the harm that they have undergone in the last 3 years as a result of the actions taken by the CRD. I won't detail the whole article here, and we'll actually probably have a lot more to share on this in our session next week. So do join that. But you can check out this website called californiaforjustice.com. You can also find it through our Twitter thread. But check out what the employees have to say. It's really shocking to see the impact that has happened on just people like you and me going about their daily business and just getting caught up in something that was completely beyond their control and the price that they have all paid for it. Also updates on, and since over the last couple of months, since this fight has become more public, I think in general, sometimes people feel, and the media coverage certainly seems to make it feel that everybody is for SB 403 other than this so-called quote-unquote fringe set of Hindu activists. That's generally a way to label and deposition anybody fighting back. So we wanted to just list some, not all, but some of the many organizations that have spoken up and pushed back against SB 403. Now, this is thanks to the collective effort of many Hindu groups, A4H, CoHNA, HAF, Hindu Pact, and a long list that I can't go into there. And these are some of the biggest names. But collectively, each of these organizations represents hundreds and thousands of, whether it's like businesses or hotel owners or home owners or shop owners, mandirs, 600 temples. I mean, we often hear that our mandirs are not political, and they're not. But, so many of them have taken a stand. We have another 125 that have signed on as part of CoHNA's petition. And, this is not just South Asians speaking up. We've had support come this week or last couple of weeks from Jewish organizations like Stand With Us, African American organizations, Cornerstone Synergy and NAACP, Asian American organizations, all thanks to the efforts of the organizations I mentioned earlier, like A4H and HAF and HSS and many more. So I don't want to get caught up in alphabet soup here, but my main point with this slide was to reassure everybody that there are a lot of people that are understanding what's going on here and the disturbing impact of what's likely. So don't think that you're alone in this fight. So just a quick glance at what Kabia had to say and why they pushed back on SB 403. And the one paragraph from AHOA that really jumped out to me, because this was an organization that was itself set up to overcome racial profiling at work. So they have a very strong stake and history and understanding of what's going on here. So these are some powerful voices that we all need to be aware of and amplify to our lawmakers, to our community. Sudhaji, anything to add there?
No, I think it's great that these organizations are coming out and speaking. So if you have been tracking what happened in the California Senate, they published a long list of 165 organizations. And we have experience with some of these organizations. I'll call out one, the Alphabet Workers Union. We have encountered them in the Santa Clara Human Rights Commission caste survey. And this man was talking eloquently about Dalit and discrimination and everything. At the end, somebody asked him the question, have you met a Dalit? And he said, no. So think about the hypocrisy of all of this stuff. So this is why we want you to really stand up and push back, learn the subject, talk about these things with anyone who comes and says, there is caste discrimination. You have to say, show me. Show me the caste discrimination in California. And so far we haven't. Go ahead, Pushpita, finish it.
So I think this was sort of the inflection point where we want to switch a little bit to this. So before there was SB 403, there was the caste bill, the ordinance that was turned into law in the city of Seattle. Sorry, don't know what happened to my computer here. Yeah. Sudhaji, did you want to talk about this? So this bill is actually, it's very similar to SB 403, pushed by the same set of people. And I'm not sure what happened to my, okay, sorry. Yeah. I was creating these slides right before we spoke. So this is the slide. Maybe
I just want to point out that the caste, weaponizing caste against Hindus is not new. So California SB 403, if you're new to it, you might think, oh, this is only happened in California. That is not true. Seattle happened. The universities were the first place where equality labs, and there, I call them the caste police. They started to come in and brainwash people and create this negative narrative about Hindus. And many of these universities, taxpayer-funded, University of California, CSU, California State Universities have added caste as category. We met with the CSU leadership. They have no idea what they have done. Okay, it's all feel good. So the Seattle bill, which Abhijit ji will talk to in a bit, but Seattle, what happened is this equality labs went there. And of course, the Seattle City Council has a councilwoman who is an openly socialist person. And her goal is to really see many lawsuits on caste happen in corporations, right? The big companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and so many more are based in Seattle and with a big Hindu population. So they passed it by, I have to say, basically this one council member bulldozed it, right, over the entire city council, except one brave new city council member. She stood up, published an open letter about why she opposed. And we should all be reading these things. We should know why they opposed. But the caste bill, when it passed, at least Seattle allocated monies to manage it, because they're going to hire a caste manager in the city to monitor and oversee all of this. And they allocated $280,000 in year one, out of which $180,000 is every year. California, with all of its wisdom, progressive, liberal, assigned $0. The reason is because they said, we are not changing the law, we are just clarifying, right? But this clarification, I hope, will cost California big time. I'm really hoping to see that. So, Pushpita, let me just go on to Abhijit ji now, right?
Yeah, this is the slide on which we do that.
Okay. So I have to tell you, when I saw this news, Abhijit ji, I was relieved. I felt like there are Hindus who want to stand up and take action. So Pushpita said earlier that Hindus never push back against a narrative on caste, which is why we face this mess now. We do not have a choice today but to really speak out and take action. So with that, Abhijit ji, please accept our gratitude for the brave task that you have undertaken. And really, you were a one-man show doing this, but we want to be behind you. I just want to assure you of that. So let's start with a little bit of your background, Abhijit ji.
Sure. So, can you hear me properly?
Yes, yes.
So first of all, I would like to thank CoHNA for giving me this opportunity to talk about the Seattle lawsuit. And a brief introduction to myself. I actually live in Morrisville, North Carolina, which is in the Research Triangle Park, RTP, and I work in the technology sector. I also volunteer as a legal analyst in a media platform called Cast Files. It's relatively new. Some of you may have heard about it. And Richa Gautam, she is the founder of this platform. So I'm working with her and we publish articles regularly. So my interest in all this began a long time ago, back in 2004, when the California textbook controversy was going on. And I read a few articles by Sri Rajiv Malhotra ji, which kind of made me aware of all the biases, And then I've been watching a lot of articles and I've been reading all of Mr. Malhotra's books. And in one of the shows, I saw a discussion between Mr. Malhotra and Mr. Nikunj Trivedi, who is actually the founder of CoHNA. So I was very impressed with what Mr. Nikunj Trivedi had to say. And fortunately, this year, I think, beginning of this year, Mr. Trivedi Nikunji, he came to our town and he had a presentation at our local temple, which I attended. And it was a very nice presentation. And I talked to him about pushback and possibly, taking some legal action. And he was very supportive. So I thank CoHNA for that again. So that's when I really started thinking about the lawsuit. So that's pretty much my background. Do you want me to go in more detail or?
Yeah. Let me ask you. So you did spend time in Seattle. So you are familiar with the city of Seattle, right? You went to the Seattle University, and right now I believe you are doing a law degree, and you're putting it to good use, right?
Right. Yeah. So I went to Seattle University, which is a small private university inside the Seattle city limits. It's also in the Capitol Hill area, which now is infamously called Capitol Hill Operation Protest or something. And by the way, I don't know if people know this, but there was a lawsuit recently in Seattle about the CHOP protests and how it was mishandled. And the city of Seattle is paying like $2 or $3 million, and that is all coming out from taxpayer money, like you and me. So anyway, I'm a part of Seattle University alumni, and I am regularly in touch with all the events. And there was an event on June 2nd, what they call an annual projects day, which was an in-person event. And I was invited by the dean of that school because I myself attended the same engineering department. And I had booked my tickets and I wanted to go, but because of this Seattle caste law, which is kind of very vague, you don't really know what exactly is caste discrimination. So I could be doing something as simple as eating a vegetarian meal in the Seattle University cafeteria and maybe having a chat with someone and telling that person that, my grandfather had a cow in his village and he used to worship that cow. And someone else sitting at the next table may say, oh, that's an oppressor, that's a dominant Hindu oppressor person, and I feel discriminated. So that was basically the main reason for me to put a legal challenge on the caste issue.
So you did not go to the event in Seattle, right? The university event.
I had to cancel my ticket because of this.
Yeah, so basically, this is important. I want everybody to know we are already being cancelled out because what has happened in Seattle City. If the law passes in California, we will be cancelling ourselves out in many ways, and the society will start cancelling us out. What does that mean? That's serious, that we are already marginalized. We have to look over our shoulders. We have to think twice about our actions, right? Nobody else has that burden on them. So anyway, go ahead and explain to us how you put together your lawsuit and where it stands today.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this legal challenge for a long time. At first, I thought that we really have to hire some lawyers and tell them that this is our problem and this is how we present it. But then, unfortunately, lawyers are very expensive, and you have to kind of explain to them all these concepts, which may be difficult to learn. So then I found one person who actually filed a lawsuit against the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA. And he did it all by himself. So he didn't hire a lawyer. So there is a process by which you can represent yourself in court. You don't really need a lawyer for doing anything in the United States. So that inspired me, and I kind of got in touch with him, and he told me this is how you do it. So I kind of followed his footsteps, and there are a couple of things that helped me a great deal. For example, the Cisco lawsuit that you mentioned 3 years ago. At first, I didn't really know much about it. And I thought maybe there is some discrimination going on there. But then Mr. Nikunji, he actually, in one of the YouTube podcasts, he mentioned a website called castgate.org. So I was curious and I looked at that website, and it had a lot of information. And it had a lot of factual information. It's not like I heard this from here. And it had also links to actual court documents. So I looked at all of those, and that's how the idea came into my head of how I could present my own case, and so that was really helpful. And the other thing that will make our case stronger is the CoHNA survey. That recent survey where they asked ordinary American people, what do you know about caste? And basically, the word caste, anytime anyone says caste, immediately, it's equal to Hindu, Brahmin, Dalit. So if you use the word caste, no one thinks of caste in Somalia or in Japan or in South America. So basically, caste means Hinduism, and That's a big problem.
That caste survey, for those of you who haven't checked it out, please check out CoHNA official tweets. We put out a detailed explanation of a very simple survey. You should all know that and be able to articulate that with friends and family and lawmakers when you have meetings with them. Also check out kohna.org/SB-403 for more details. So, Abhijit ji, so what is the next step you think? Where did you file this case? Where did you file this case? What courts?
Yeah, right. So, to give you some background, in the United States, the Constitution of the United States is the highest legal authority. So nobody can violate the US Constitution, whether it's Seattle City or it's the state of California or even the President of the United States. And there are a lot of constitutional flaws in the caste bill in both Seattle and California. And since it's a matter of the Constitution, I filed my case in the federal court in the Western District of Washington in Seattle, because they have kind of authority over these kind of matters. So the first step was to file a complaint. So if you want to file a lawsuit against someone, it's a civil action lawsuit. It's called a civil action lawsuit. And you have to file a complaint. So you have to explain what are the issues with this law, and you have to give some facts and some evidence. For example, in the Seattle City ordinance, it was mentioned that like 1 out of 4 Dalits are being molested. And there were countless statements from unknown people accusing unknown managers of unknown caste discrimination at unknown dates and unknown times without any witness. So, I mean, all that doesn't really prove as evidence, you know. So anyone can say anything. That doesn't mean that you bring a law in. And again, as has been pointed out several times before, this is not a facially neutral category. And most important question everyone should be asking is that caste is already being addressed by the existing categories, you know, like ancestry and creed, color, etc. So why this sudden urge to clarify something that's already out there? So let's, even if we give them the benefit of the doubt, okay, like let's say they are very benevolent and they have a noble cause and they want to eliminate all kinds of discrimination, including caste discrimination. So if that is the case, then why don't these ordinances use the term something like inherited social class or status? That also includes caste discrimination, and it includes a lot of other advantages or disadvantages that someone may inherit because of their birth, you know. And this applies to everybody. It applies to white Americans, Chinese Americans, Europeans, whereas the term caste itself is problematic because it directly points to Hindus. And then they try to change the language saying, oh no, it's not just Hindus, it's Muslims and Christians. Then they say it's South Asians, Southeast Asians, Japan, Africa, South America. So basically all the continents and all the countries except Europe, Australia, and North America.
And Middle East, the California bill does not have Middle East. You know, the examples you brought up, 1 in 4 Dalits and all of that is from the Equality Lab survey. So, I mean, this is a question we always ask our lawmakers. Why are you using a faulty data? Who says that Equality Labs is the authority on caste when they are not Hindu? See, the sponsor of the bill, the author of the bill, they're not Hindus, but they are standing up and saying we are civil rights activists and want to clean up Hindus. This seriously wrong. So, like you said, constitutionality, the defining of a religion, and what happened with Mr. Sundarayar in Cisco case was assigning him a religion. These are all against the law, but. California is sort of saying, and I'm seeing this again and again, publicly that we can make the law, then you go fight it in courts. So they're forcing us to fight in courts. And we have had meetings with lawmakers and with engineers who have said, I am a senior engineer. I work on really cool stuff that really, really does something great for California and the United States. Why are you making me not spend my time on productive things, but then having to take my time out and fight these things? They have no answer, right? So the examples you brought, and this is Seattle ordinance, and the public statements by Seattle City Councilwoman Kshama Sawant saying she wants to see lots of cases, right, in these corporations. But remember, in all these years of universities passing caste as category, and even many corporations have added caste into this their HR policies. Mm-hmm. No, there are no police reports on any university campus of caste discrimination. There are no human resources complaints. There are no abuses that people have gone out and reported to anyone. It's always some shadowy phantom examples. And that is where the challenge is. We are saying, where is the proof? And sounds like California.
That harks back to the profiling I brought up earlier. It's always, innuendo, and, it's always a lot of innuendo, which will work because now the community is guilty until they can prove themselves innocent. So good luck with proving that, you're a vegetarian for whatever reason, but not a vegetarian to be oppressive. Or, you celebrate Diwali because it's a beautiful festival, one that you grew up with, because you honor Lord Rama, whatever the issue might be, but not to oppress others. And, because this is what is being offered as evidence of discrimination. I just want everyone to remember that, because when people think of the word discrimination, we immediately tend to think of some of the most horrific crimes that we hear reported upon in the media from different parts of the world. But even the proponents of the bill, though they make claims about rape and death threats and all of this, there's not a single police report they have shown. Because, and that's been our question that, okay, we understand that, the police, the death threat would not be filed, or a rape threat would not be filed under, caste. But a police report should exist, right? That there was an assault on me, or these are very serious allegations.
I just also want to point out, just because there are no police reports or HR complaints, you might think that, so what's the harm? Let them pass it. Well, here is the harm. As it is, school textbooks reinforce the idea that caste is uniquely tied to Hindus, right? Many Hindu students in classrooms have to sit through the humiliation of teachers saying, let's play the caste game. And only when some students come and complain at home do the parents go in and tell the teachers what they're doing is really atrocious. But many times our students learn about all of this terrible stuff without learning about the wonderful civilization contributions of India Hindus to the world, right? So when the bill becomes law, it reinforces. So a school teacher can ask, what's your caste? They do today. They ask, Sunita, what's your caste? And the Sunita is freezing. Sunita doesn't know what to say. Now the teacher can say, Sunita, you can't tell me that you don't have a caste and you don't know about it. California state says you have a caste, right? So you must have a caste. Go ask your parent. Well, I'm just saying it's an extreme case. But it really, really cements the fact that Hindus are the only people with caste associated with that, and we cannot shed that baggage. They don't understand that we do not bring any of the baggage from our previous life. We don't, Indian life. We come here on merit, right? I don't know how many Hindus here on this call today can claim they came as a refugee or a church sponsored them. Very, very rare. We come here on merit for jobs or schools or anything. So with that, Abhijit ji, what do you expect next in the Seattle case?
So the legal process is a little bit slow. Not as slow as in India, but it had to go through all the proper steps. So the first step has been filed. And then the next step is something called serving the summons. So that's when you send an official notification to the people who have brought this lawsuit against. So that's Kshama Sawant. She is the main council member who actually wrote this bill. And then Lisa Herbert, she is the co-sponsor of the bill. And Bruce Harrell is the mayor of Seattle.
The mayor.
And one important thing I want to point out is that my lawsuit is against them in both their official and individual capacities. So, because what happens is, if they're in the official capacity, then they leave, like Councilmember Sawant's term ends end of this year, and then she's off the hook, and the city of Seattle and taxpayers are going to pay the price. But with the individual defendant, I want to bring an illicit motive challenge, because, so even if it's a law, even if the law, like the caste, for example, instead of caste, it was something else, which was facially neutral, and it applied to everybody on this planet. But if that law or that status was brought in with an ulterior motive, to pursue some ideology or political motive, or to target a particular race or ethnicity, then you can challenge it under the illicit motive challenge in court. And I am very confident that I have a lot of proof that, certain Seattle city members worry or spend more time about some political government in a foreign country than their own residents, like the CAA bill that was passed a couple of years ago. And Seattle is in a very bad shape right now. So instead of focusing on problems at home, people are focusing on something else, and they're targeting only a particular group. So it's very easy to demonstrate in court that there is an illicit motive here.
Yes. So, I'm going to ask you, first of all, I want to say, as Hindus, we should all be supporting you, right? Because you cannot be a one-person fighter against this. It is all our fight. You are actually leading it. You're representing us. You're giving voice to the many Hindus' concerns, because mostly Hindus are a very silent lot. So you're giving voice to our concerns and taking action on it. I'm going to ask everybody, please support this effort. Caste Files is one, but CoHNA is also, we have been in the game for 3-4 years, and every day is consumed by how to counter these kinds of things. So support us on this also. And I'm going to ask you, what is the advice you have for, let's say, the Californians? And now that this bill is continuing, what advice do you have for us in California?
Right. So yeah, I'll just go quickly through them. So I would say that I think people are already on the right track. I mean, they're meeting with their senators and assembly persons and protesting and reaching out to the general public. But in addition to that, what they can do, and I did it in the case of Seattle. So every state has its own claim or tort form. So it's a legal form. You can fill it up. Any resident of California can fill it and say that this bill is discriminatory for the following reasons. And I can send you some samples. And they have to include a $25 check just for the expenses, and they have to mail it to a particular address. And they are supposed to respond back to you in 45 days. And if you don't like what they say, then you can file a lawsuit. So if a lot of people do that, yeah.
Is that for the bill, or bill has to become law before you file the tort?
I don't think you have to wait for it to become the law, because it's already out there in the public and it's already creating so many issues. So I think there's nothing stopping anyone from doing it right now. And the second important thing is there is a new agency. It's called CA.HATE, called CA.HATE. I think you must know about it, but unfortunately, it's the Civil Rights Department which is handling it. But still, I think it should be worth to make complaints there. And the third and most important thing I wanted to point out is that the Attorney General of California, 1 year ago, he created his own executive team. And in that team, there is a special department for legislative affairs, which looks at all pending legislation, like the SB 403. So it has not become law yet, but it is pending, and it may affect the Attorney General's office, because the Hindu American Foundation's lawsuit against CRD is being defended by the Attorney General's office. So any future lawsuits, the Attorney General's office will get involved. And there is a director, her name is Amy Alec. She is in charge of that department. So we all can send our concerns to Amy, or I believe there is a petition that is going to come up very soon. People can sign that petition and let this particular department know that this legislation is going to create a lot of problems, and the Attorney General needs to step in and address it immediately.
Your voice is fading out, but the points you raised, if you could send it to me and we will disseminate to the groups, because I think it's important. For example, the California Hate Hotline. I'm going to ask everyone out here to call that hotline. It doesn't cost you anything, but just pick up and call that 800 number and say that SB 403 specifically targets you, profiles you. It's a hate bill. You want this Attorney General's office to take action on it. You can do that today. Every Hindu should really take the responsibility.
Yeah, but I would say not just the hate line, because the hate line is unfortunately monitored by the CRD, which is super compromised. So instead, do that, but also take the time to send in a written complaint to your lawmakers, your assembly person and your senator. And if it's a work situation, your HR, if it's a university or campus security, always document. So important to document what is going on. But unfortunately, right now, some of the and documented multiple places.
And I want to ask any of those 40 participants here, I'm hoping you have all signed the petitions opposing SB 403. We have had petitions, HAF has petitions, Hindu Pact has had petitions. Please, you have to sign it to express your opposition to this. So that is important. Then call the Judiciary Committee, call your representative assembly member today, tomorrow, and express your opposition to it as assembly members for meetings. And we will actually coach you on the meetings. And sometimes the community asks us to join, and we are happy to join. So we have a lot of tasks to do. And I would ask everybody to be responsible and do it. So with Abhijit Ji, I'm going to say we have to stand behind him. He should not be the lone Hindu out there. He cannot be. This is a fight he's fighting for not only himself and his family, but for all of us. We should recognize that and continue to work with Abhijit Ji. We certainly will, CoHNA, because we think we can learn a lot from you and the process you have taken by filing this case on your own. And I think that takes a lot of courage to do it. We appreciate that, Abhijit Ji. Anything you want to say in closing before we just go on to the next steps for everybody?
Yeah, so I would encourage everybody to, know the law more, because it's going to impact all of us sooner or later. And you don't really have to be a lawyer to file a complaint. You can start with the basics, and there are a lot of resources out there to help you. And remember that the US Constitution is the binding authority. So if you feel something is violating that, for example, the caste law, which is not neutral, then you should file a complaint with your legal authorities immediately, and don't wait for someone else to do it for you.
Exactly. You have to be responsible for it yourself. So there are a couple of questions.
Yeah, I wanted to take a few questions. So somebody asked, can you create a one-click letter for the lawmakers that people can send? Yes, that was what Sudhaji was referring to. That has been in place for a couple of months now. Please go to CoHNA.org/no2SB403. The very first or second link is, a letter that you can click. And you have to put in your address. That's very important, because that's the only way we can identify who your lawmakers are. So you have to be a California resident. Please sign it, have everybody in your family sign it, get 10 of your contacts in California to also sign it. That is very, very, very important. And it has been made very simple. And then after that, there are a lot more resources you will find on that same website. You will find a script which you can use to call, because don't stop at that one-click email. Follow up in a few days and call your assembly person, call the attorney general, call the governor's office and explain why you're worried. What is the fear that you're worried? You can use that script and use those talking points and give your own version of it. Whatever is the impact on you, whether you're a student, you're a retired person, you're working, whatever, your story will be different, but the fears will be there. So there's a lot of info. And then you need to really take this and get at least 10 to 20 more people to understand what's going on, because we are consistently hearing that people are not aware of what's going on. This is really important. And for those of you who want to get more engaged, there are a lot of community groups that have now come together. There are selfless people going out every weekend, distributing flyers. There's a flyer you can download from the CoHNA website. Print that flyer, put it to, and don't just think Indian or Hindu groups. This is a community problem. Your Rotary Club, your Alumni Association, your accountants club, your reading book club, all of these are places where you need to go, and your child's play group. These are all places where you need to go and talk to everybody, irrespective of their ethnicity and background, because when injustice is being done, the ethnicity is less relevant. And as you can see from the list of organizations supporting us, there it's not restricted to South Asians.
There's some other questions about inheritance and all that. All you have to worry about is that this is targeted at Hindus. Existing law protects already. You don't need to clarify with a caste, adding caste into the bill. The national origin and ancestry already covers. And the district attorney, Jeff Rosen of Santa Clara, has a great video where he speaks to the fact that he does not need this law to prosecute on caste discrimination. So this is the whole point is that these are the things you need to know and be able to articulate and say, if the DA of Santa Clara says this, why do you have to clarify? So also remember, when we talk to lawmakers, we are not talking about other faiths and they have this and that. You're talking about yourself and saying you do not want to be profiled. And the other point you need to know is this bill and the Seattle caste ordinance does not have an end date. It doesn't clarify whether it's immigrant Hindus, it's a second, third generation, whether it's adopted kids, whether it's interfaith, intercaste. It does not clarify any of that. And what about non-Indian Hindus? Anybody can be caught in it as long as you're Hindu. Really, it's about ethnic genocide, cultural genocide. I'm using strong words. I want you to know that this is a very, very crazy and dangerous attempt at a micro-minority faith of immigrants in California and in the United States. It might pass in California, okay, because of its politics. But we are putting up a very good fight, and we will not stop if it becomes a law. We'll take it to, the extent that it needs to go to. And every day, more and more Hindus, even the CEOs and others are coming into this to understand that this is a dangerous, right? So it is good. But what happens in California happens elsewhere in the US and other states. So if you are not in California, start building your networks with your lawmakers, your city council members, your mayor, your state legislature members, and the federal senators and Congress members. It is really, really our job to do that. I was reading today something that said Hindus are doing very well in the US, but we have been doing so poorly in being engaged in the political front. This is why we are paying a price. We have to correct it and correct it very quickly. So I know it's just 1 minute.
Yeah, there was one question about what to do if you're not a California resident, because a lot of the actions we are saying are for California residents. So if you're not California residents, couple of things. First of all, you probably have contacts in California. So all of the things that we said, they should do it. The second thing is there is a change.org petition, which is not a CoHNA petition, but it's been circulated by a community member. You can certainly sign that petition and make that go viral as well. The third thing is, this is a national fight, as Sudhaji said, so we need support. If you cannot take any direct action, please contribute your time and money. At the very least, become a member, donate to CoHNA, donate to Abhijit ji, to Caste Files. It is, there's a lot of talk, but the talk needs to translate into real, tangible contributions and actions. CoHNA has been in this fight for the last 3 years. That's why there are resources that exist that we share whenever you guys are asking questions, I'm sending in links. That's come about because way before this stuff hit the limelight, there was a group of people that identified this as a problem and have been working consistently trying to make ourselves heard. So let's not wait to react. If you're not in California, there's a lot of work you can be doing and you should be doing to ensure that your state doesn't become the next California. Because if this bill passes, or whether this bill passes or not, they're not going to stop, right? There are 11 other states that this could come into very quickly. There'll be efforts to bring it at a national level. There already has been a lot of chatter to this effect. So there is almost nobody, I think, who doesn't have a role to play in here, monetarily contributing time and pushing back wherever you are, whatever your community is. It honestly doesn't matter, because wherever you are, whether you are a high school student, whether you are a retired person or anybody in between, whether you have kids, you don't have kids, whether you are Hindu, Indian or not, this bill will impact you. And so this is the time for action. And CoHNA, I think, prides itself on being very action oriented. So I'm actually very happy to hear Abhijit ji's story, because that is actually exactly what we have said for years, is our grassroots work in action. We cannot be everywhere, nor do we claim to be everywhere. We don't have the expertise. I'm not a lawyer. But it's wonderful that, we were out there talking about this in, I think Abhijit ji said January, way before any bills had hit, because we know this trend is not going to stop. So for everybody on the call, I want you to join. I want you to donate and support, and I want you to get 10 more people to do the same.
Yeah, and Abhijit ji, we will be continuing to be in conversations with you, because this is an important subject and it's a collective effort. So with that, I just want to have you be assured that we are behind you.
Yeah,
we may have had some fits and starts in this whole process, but
and also there is a couple of questions, Sudhaji, that I think we'll just take a minute to answer. People are saying, can we not mention our identity? Are we going to be in defensive mode, disowning our heritage, etc., etc.? So the answer to all, I can't go into all of them in detail, but again, please check out our website, our YouTube channel. You will find a ton of information where all of these questions have already been addressed. We should, and the very reason CoHNA was formed was to ensure that Hindu Americans get representations, whether it's in their schools, offices, communities, policies, laws. That is our goal. But that will only happen when all of us take the effort to go out and do what Abhijit is doing, maybe not from a legal perspective. Maybe you need to just go and engage with your city mayor, with your city councilor, with your lawmaker. How many of us even know who is our lawmaker? How many of us call our lawmakers to discuss our issues? I can tell you, I have met with maybe the offices of 100 or more lawmakers by now. And consistently, Sudhaji and I get the feedback that, it's interesting to hear you guys, because we don't often hear from Hindus. Consistent feedback, whether you're left, right, Republican, Democrat, East Coast, West Coast, Texas. I mean, it's across the country. Hindus we are punching way below our weight. And yes, it's boring. It's very boring. These things are very boring. You've got to sit through hours and hours of boring discussions to get the time to have your 2 minutes. But that is very important. And that is what everybody needs to do.
And the question about the identity. Hey, stand up for your identity. You are not going to let anybody else remove it from you, or if challenged, challenge back. If you are a Hindu, be a proud Hindu. Teach your kids to be proud Hindus and stand up in school. Make sure they're learning things that are important. And if I ask them, are you learning about sati and caste and all that? Go to the teacher and say, please stop humiliating my child. Go to the school district and say, I want to see the curriculum. I want to help you change it. And we can help you. We work with a lot of schools. We have a Hindu parent network that does that. So with that, I want to say we are at about 7 minutes past. I want to be respectful. Join us next week. We have more important continuation of this important subject with people who are taking action, just like Abhijit ji. We'll bring Abhijit ji back as the Seattle case progresses. But in the meantime, let's support him through CoHNA, caste files, etc. Thank you, Abhijit ji. We are so grateful for your action. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Namaste.
Right. Namaste, everybody. Thank you.
Recording stopped.